Hi, hello. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to a demo class on automation testing with Selenium. About myself, I hold a master's degree in computer applications. I have got 11 years of teaching experience in various technologies as well as 8 plus years of professional IT experience working on various platforms like Java, J2EE, Struts and Spring Framework, Hibernate, EJBs, web services like SOAP and RESTful, GWT, and I worked as a developer, a senior developer, a lead developer, as well as a researcher. I worked on automation testing as well with Selenium, TestNG, and Cucumber. I worked on web and application servers like Apache, HTTPD, Tomcat, JBoss 5, 7, Wildfly. I've got experience in designing and scripting more than 4 end-to-end corporate test frameworks using Selenium and TestNG. And I'm a tech savvy. I've got passion about researching on new technologies, updating myself with the new technologies, and mentoring the people. So today what we are going to discuss is the agenda. So where does the testing fit in the SDLC? I guess everyone knows about the software development lifecycle, and I hope that everyone is from the IT background. Even if not, we welcome a number of doubts to clear. So what is the motto of testing? What is automation testing? So here we will be discussing like why should we test an application, and while testing where to use the automation testing and where not, and then why to choose Selenium, the components of Selenium, and so on. So where does testing fit in the SDLC? The software development lifecycle. The starting phase is the requirement analysis, where you gather all the client needs. Then you start designing how your project should go and how the client should see his product. And then you start implementing or coding or developing that specific set of requirements. Once you have completed that development, or once in the process of the development, you should ensure the client that the product developed is of highest quality. For that purpose, the testing phase comes into picture in the test DLC. So what is the motto of testing? So there are a lot of definitions for testing, but one of them is, and one of them in the sense like I do feel it as the best one. The software testing is an investigation conducted to provide stakeholders with information about the quality of the product or the service under test. Also, software testing can also provide an objective, an independent view of the software to allow the business to appreciate and understand the risks of software implementation. So what is a test lifecycle? As you have seen that testing is also a part of the total software development lifecycle. So testing is again a phase, and that phase also happens as a set of different processes. Just like any process, testing is also has got its phases, which we can just say as a cycle called as SDLC, software testing life cycle, and this SDLC basically is part of the SDLCs, the total software development life cycle. So SDLC is a set of phases wherein the testing phase starts with the test planning. So what is the test planning is? A test plan is preparing the test strategy and planning, like how and what you want to test. So that is the strategy and planning to start that test. And test development. So first of all, to start with the testing, we should create an environment to test your application. For that sake, you need to create the testing environment. Test execution, writing the test cases or creating and executing the test scripts. So here the thing is, whatever the things that you have covered from the client, which is basically called as the requirements, and if you want to test those requirements, you need to pull out the part that you want to test and you need to write them as test cases. So to test a functionality, you need to prepare a test case for that specific functionality. Reporting. This is a post-conditional process which involves collection data from the end users. Result analysis. Analyzing result and bug report. Resolution and regression testing. So regression testing is once you find a bug in the software product that has been developed, and after the testing, if you find any bugs, then it will be passed on back to the development team. Once the specified bug has been fixed, again it will be retested and it will be integrated with the existing code. So regression testing comes into picture whenever a software is modified or a new requirement is added. The existing functionality has not been ruined. I mean to say, the existing functionality is working perfectly, as well as the new functionality is also working according to the expectations. Then once all the test conditions are met, the testing process ends, and hence the SDLC comes to an end. So what is automation testing? So basically, testing involves a lot of processes, of which are manual testing, automation testing. So manual testing, as the name says, one can test an application manually, which basically will need a lot of resources, a lot of time to test the entire application. Instead of testing an application manually, the process can be customized using tools, which is called as automation testing. So it's nothing but, if you want to test an application manually, probably sometimes you may have to test over and over and over and again. So the same process can be automated. So in software testing, test automation is the use of special software, which we can call them as the testing tools, to control the execution of tests and the comparison of actual outcomes with the predicted outcomes. So here it means that in a manual test execution, the person who does the testing decides the actual and the expected output. The same thing can be programmed with a testing tool. So test automation can automate some repetitive but necessary tasks and a formalized testing process which are already in place, or it can add additional testing that would be difficult to perform manually. Automation testing does not replace manual testing. It should always be remembered that no technology can replace an existing technology. Especially here, even though automation testing is there, it cannot replace the manual testing. So everything cannot be automated. Let us come to our testing tool, Selenium, the one which we are sitting here to discuss. So why Selenium? Selenium is an open source library and it is free of cost. It supports multiple browsers, multiple programming languages like Java, C#, Ruby, etc. Can be used efficiently for designing different kinds of frameworks. It's very easy to automate the dynamic web pages, also like the one that uses the jQuery and Ajax calls, which are mostly used, which are very highly used in our current day web pages. It supports design patterns. A design pattern is the industry best standard which is being in practice to write a piece of code. So huge developer and tester forums. Because Selenium is of open source, it has got a huge developer. It means that anyone can write code, anyone can understand that code. Components of Selenium. Selenium is a suite of different tools which can be used individually. It means that Selenium basically doesn't come as a single set. Selenium is a set of various tools and each of them can be individually used according to your requirement. The different components are Selenium IDE, Selenium RC, Selenium Webdriver and the Selenium Grid. What is Selenium IDE? Selenium IDE, it comes as a plugin for the Firefox browser. You should understand that it is a plugin. It is just a plugin for the Firefox browser. It means that Selenium IDE is supported only by the Firefox browser. It's a record and playback tool. Interacts directly with the AUT application under test using the JavaScript in the browser. The Selenium IDE is driven by the user interactions with the application under test in the browser. It means that while a manual tester tests the application or while he continues to test different functionalities in the browser, the same thing can be recorded because Selenium IDE is a record and playback tool. So those user actions can be recorded and can be used as automated scripts later. So those recorded scripts can be saved as test scripts in several languages like Java, Ruby or C#. Depends on the requirement. Every software will have its pros and cons, and the Selenium IDE disadvantage is it is supported only by the Mozilla Firefox browser and its scope is limited. The second component of Selenium is Selenium RC, which is called as a remote control. So Selenium RC is remote control. It uses a proxy server to interact with the application under test in the browser. It means that it cannot directly interact with the application. It needs a middleman or a mediator in between, which is basically a proxy server. A Selenium RC is an API and libraries, and those libraries can be used to prepare a script or can be used to do the coding based on the functionality which we want to test. So if you see this diagram, you can find there are different browsers in which the application or website is running. And there is a middleman which is the Selenium remote control server. And the most bottom basically are the Selenium scripts. So they basically interact with the proxy server which interacts with the web application running in the browser. Selenium Webdriver. Selenium Webdriver is the successor of Selenium RC. Means that it has come after Selenium RC by covering several disadvantages of Selenium RC. Basically, it is now deprecated. I mean to say Selenium RC is now deprecated, and all the features of RC which are needed have been combined with WebDriver, and the same thing has been released as Selenium 2.0 API. So WebDriver is designed in a simpler and more concise programming interface, along with addressing some limitations in Selenium RC API. WebDriver is a compact object-oriented API when compared to Selenium 1.0, which is RC. It drives the browser much more effectively and overcomes the limitation of Selenium, which affected our functional test coverage, like the file upload or download, pop-ups and dialogues barrier. So these functionalities like uploading and file downloading, dealing with the JavaScript alert boxes, AJAX calls, they can't be efficiently done with Selenium RC. So these things can be efficiently done using the WebDriver API. And also WebDriver API does not need a middleman, so it doesn't require a proxy server. Selenium Grid. Selenium Grid is a test execution platform for several machines, so which is basically called as a parallel execution of your test scripts at the same time on different machines. It manages multiple environments from a central point, making it easy to run the tests against a vast combination of browsers or operating systems. So the advantage of making a parallel execution of your test scripts is minimized maintenance time. So at a time you can do a lot of tasks, a lot of execution, and at the same time you are doing the execution on different platforms, different operating systems, testing the application on different browsers, etc. So this kind of testing facility allows you to minimize the maintenance costs and also maintenance time. This is the major advantage of Selenium Grid. Automation framework. So what is an automation test framework? A test framework is a platform which is defined as a set of abstract concepts, processes, procedures, and an environment in which automated tests will be designed, created, and implemented. So here, talking about the test framework, basically to design or to write a bit of code to test an application or a bit of functionality. A piece of code is needed, but to standardize that coding process and to standardize the whole test process, it needs to be packed in a standard mechanism which we call them as framework. So what kind of framework can be designed using Selenium. So Selenium is just an API to automate a software, but to complete that automation, we need a standard and one has to rely on that standardized framework. So everyone should remember that writing automation scripts is easy, but to make that automation script maintainable and reusable, it needs to be put under a framework. So there are a lot of frameworks, different types of frameworks like modular framework, keyword driven framework, data driven framework, and hybrid framework. So modular framework basically, you start designing a framework. You started writing code for a test case. Slowly, a lot of functionalities have been coming into your application. So you will be extending the test automation. Keyword driven, data driven, and hybrid. So hybrid is basically a set of the other frameworks. It's a combination. It's a combination of other frameworks. So how to design a framework with Selenium? So as I said, Selenium is just an API to write the code, but you need something else to design or complete the framework. So for that purpose, we use TestNG to complete the design of our frameworks. TestNG is a very good open source library through which you can design a very manageable and reusable frameworks. TestNG also supports good and pretty reporting structures. So what is being used for designing a framework? We need Selenium, which is an API. So here, what is an API is basically, so we use that API, or which is a set of classes and interfaces and methods. So we use that API and we write a piece of code and we integrate as a framework. We use TestNG, and we need any build tool like Ant or Maven. Any IDE could be Eclipse, NetBeans, IntelliJ IDE. A lot of open source and lot of corporate tools are there, but mostly Eclipse is commonly used in the market. So you can come to us for any doubts. It's just a brief demo and not the overall content. It's just a brief and an abstract session on the, it's just a walkthrough on Selenium automation testing, and it's not a complete course. So that's all, friends. If you have any doubts, contact us and join us for more learnings. Thanks one and all.